Before you slip into unconsciousness. Shout out to the Doors. Shout out to Jim Morrison. Shout out to Sam Cooke. Man, shout out to the Crystal Ship. And what the hell was the other song, the Sam Cooke song? Doesn't matter. Shout out to the Cardano Collective. The intention of this video, right? So shout out to Charles Hoskinson and Cardano and the Cardano Collective in particular. So this is not a Cardano centric stream. But when we look at the broader market, Cardano has the opportunity to levy one of the most powerful use cases within the blockchain sphere. And recently, there's been discussion about starting a Discord, and it's funny, man. Like from folks in the community, I'm learning. I Bitcoin's kind of where I started. The thesis for Cardano, what made me think about like, oh wow, Cardano, is it empowers Bitcoin. Anyone that knows Bitcoin, there's 21 million Bitcoin. It's a UTXO based blockchain. Let's go, Dixie Flatline. I see you, bro. I appreciate the hell out of you, man. So we're out here cooking freedom recipes, brother. Right? We have to be the change we da 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 and all this, and you will know them by their fruit. Someone shout out to the guy that runs the Cardano Collective account. Rolling through the Iagon Discord, and of course, there's all this Discord and whatnot. It is sad to see some of our most potent and brave entrepreneurs and creatives in the space like undermining each other, and that's sad. Okay, so if you're on Team Cardano, if you're on Team Bitcoin, if you're on Team Freedom and Liberty to the people of the world, that's what this is. You here on that's what I spend my time doing. We need better Bitcoin conversations, okay? We need better blockchain conversations. So shout out to UTXO based DeFi. Shout out to the 21 million Bitcoin, the 21 million Zcash, the 21 million Bitcoin Cash, the 45 billion ADA, the 24 billion Night, the infinite Monero, though it tracks closely in its issuance rate to Bitcoin, etc. That also, by the way, spoiler alert, the grand unified UTXO theory. Cardano is the only blockchain that is not only positioned, but well positioned to be the hub that runs infrastructure like UTXO based blockchain infrastructure concurrently, where running a Cardano node is not only energetically efficient, but you can validate, facilitate privacy and atomic swaps. Bro, think about this. Lightning Network on ramps and off ramps. A lot of folks don't know, like these Bitcoin maxis will be out here talking about, oh, Bitcoin can do it. Bro, 7 transactions per second. Visa Network expects 40,000. You know what I mean? And so 7 transactions per second is an irrational conversation to have if we're talking about running global finance, right? So Lightning Network, it's a custodial secondary layer. And when we look at some of the cool projects that are building on Cardano, like Fluid tokens and the Bifrost Bridge, guys, that is levying the power of the unspent transaction output model and just doing really incredible work. That is not the subject of this. The subject of this is, well, it kind of is though, but a macro plan. Okay, so this one is for the Cardano Collective. Typically, every day, I'm trying to do an hour to 3 hours a day. First hours on 3 or 4 things, and then the last 2 hours guided by whatever's in the chat. So if Litecoin folks roll through and represent, we're talking Litecoin. If SNEC fam roll through and represent SNEC and talking about SNEC, asking questions about SNEC, that's what we're talking about. Feel me? So, but this will be the Cardano, this is, shout out to the Cardano Collective, a plan. Okay, someone had said, I have not watched Charles Hoskinson's recent videos, but I've heard that he had said if someone has a better idea or if there's some whatever, I mean, the Cardano Collective launched first. Shout out again to whoever's making that all happen. But so here are the 2 primary first objectives of the Cardano Collective. Go visit their Discord. Okay, so the plan is we have a general global nexus of conversation. That's where you strike is kicking ass, Sneck, there it goes, ascend perpetuals, some crazy NFT project, right? Shout out to the Mallard Order, for instance, and the Clays and all this stuff, the folks that are trying to build on Cardano. So global nexus of conversation. What's winning? What's happening in the Bitcoin markets? Peace, right? Are there peace talks? Is there announcements of Bitcoin preferred for international trade? How many people are sleeping on that, Dixie? Right? How many people are going to miss that moment? Oh, also, shout out to just the freedom communities and the highways and byways. I was in a space the other day listening in with a friend, and I had heard that there is a peace treaty being signed on the 19th. So if I was going to circle a date on the calendar for, again, I don't know if it's a buy the rumor, sell the news, or if it's get yourself in position for a catalyst. But word is, we're going to get peace legislation signed by all parties, agreed to on the 19th. So peace to the people of the world. So that's the kind of thing that we in the global channel, right? And then we have two other channels, right? Right now there are three primary channels on the Cardano collective Discord. General, which is most of the flow. Then we have an SPO network and a DREP network. If we can get those two things cooking, okay? So here's what we can do in the SPO network page, right? If we see legislation being proposed in the Treasury for like Dingo Node, right? Shout out to Dingo Node. Drop the Discord link. Oh, bro, good call. Good call. Yeah, let me do that. Shit. Um um you know what? Actually, yeah, I can find it. Uh good call, Dixie. Thank you, bro. I know that the account shared with me a link here. Let me just navigate and throw that in the here we go. Here's the one from the Cardano Collective account. Their handle is at Cardano Entity. Um, there we go. I don't know if that came through. Shout out to Yo Yo. Um, Tunk the Yeah, man. Shout out to the Tunk fam. Man, I was rolling through there because which kind of justified this. Hey, it's raining. That's beautiful, bro. That's beautiful. I love rain, man. Listen to the rhythm uh, of the falling rain, telling me just what a fool I've been. Your ear has to catch the key. That's the thing when you just go, oh, but that's what when you said raining, it's raining. I love this. I love the sound of the rain. Um, I want to know, have you ever seen the rain? Bro, shout out to SpaceX. I mean, look, love them or hate them, successful. Shout out to the Freedom 250 card. Bro, I just read something about Ilia Tapuria may have orbital damage. So mad heal well, champ. Come back, good work, just engaged. He is straight up legendary business. Anyway, back to Cardano. So the plan, right? Two first things we do: SPO network and DREP network. Okay, so imagine this: shared goals are so powerful. This is the kind of thing, Charles, right? That we could have done better last year, right? Don't even get me started on the Midnight Network rollout. Okay, if we had made that make money, right? If I was man, if I was in charge of it, do you guys know that there was a Cardano Epoch rollover on Halloween night? And do you know that that coincided with the original release of the Midnight Network? And do you know that Satoshi Nakamoto released the Bitcoin white paper on Halloween night 2008? And Genesis block cooking January 3rd, 2009? So if you think about uniting communities, could you imagine having 31 days of legend and lore celebrating Bitcoin and Cardano and UTXO and the big players, Hal Finney, shout out to Hal, bro, and math and science and all this cool shit. And then the Midnight Network releases Halloween night. Bro, that would have sold itself. It's just like shout out to Bodega Cardano. The next time that we see like Gina Carano and Ronda Rousey on Netflix or Canelo Alvarez comes out the cut, bro, something that I saw last night. heavyweight. Well, he's not the champ now. That's shout out to Alexander Usyk, but Tyson Fury, right, is announcing something with the UFC. So like when these big events happen, these are ways where we can get flywheels of liquidity flowing into Cardano, right? And like what these are the things where like someone like with a platform of like a Charles could be like, yo, shout out to Bodega Cardano, and da 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 da, But again, if that's not his strength, fine, right? Like no one's necessarily going to accuse him of being too cool. But for those of us that really enjoy these kind of combat sports and whatnot, or football, I know nothing about football. My ex-girlfriend used to sing at like professional sports games. And so I'd be able to go, bro. I had press box seat man. Doesn't matter. But I don't know anything about football. But I guarantee you, if we give like a spot for people that are vibing, like on the Cardano Collective Discord, to say, yo, do we want to, have a bodega odds market, a Saturday night fights with bodega? And suddenly we have these things where people that are interested in soccer or football or, we can turn that into revenue flows. And these are the things that are content creators, right? And not a lot of people need scripts, right? They need to have or be paid to shill something. I'm not paid by anyone, by the way. Shit, if someone's willing to pay me, let's go, right? Or at least let's have that conversation. And healthcare, but that's American problems, right? Shout out to the great land of Canada. But yeah. So guys, plan, okay? We unite SPOs, we build out a network, right? So one, if we have things like the Dingo node, like which was a Go node proposal, a fully performant Cardano node, written not in Haskell, but in Go. And then we have like Amaru Cardano that's doing a Rust-based node, things like this, right? That in the SPO channel can be discussed. And then we can actually have a sensible conversation on, is this 6 million ADA expenditure from our treasury, is it worth it? Is that going to substantially add to our capability? And many would argue that with these more accessible languages like Go and Rust, that it might allow folks to bid on the open market when it's time to upgrade Laos. You know what I mean? Like in the community, I think that it is really healthy for us to start really drawing a line at Laos and going, okay, when we update the protocol post Laos and Paris and kind of where we're at now, as we start saying, hey, what are the scaling solutions? Like, so shout out Gummy Worm, shout out to Hydra Protocol, shout out to Midgard Protocol, shout out to these scaling solutions that are very novel, that are very unique, that are almost they're almost a hybrid between a first and secondary layer solution. They're not as discrete as, say, the Lightning Network, in many ways. Just by virtue of how the smart contracts are able to be expressed, and like the Bifrost proposal, guys, that's going to bake. So get this, right? Every Cardano SPO can opt in to basically hold a live copy of the Bitcoin ledger. That's only about a terabyte of space, right? Now, relative to Solana, that's 600 terabytes, guys. So also talk about marketing. Why Cardano over and Litecoin and Bitcoin, and Zcash and Monero, all of these ledgers to hold the current state and the entire history of the UTXO set and the addresses associated therewith. It's less than a terabyte. Like again, Bitcoin is about a terabyte. Cardano is about 500 gigabytes. Litecoin's about 100 gigabytes. So Cardano SPOs for very little overhead, way less, like 5 terabytes of storage space. Now, shout out to Iagon, right? Their product, the Cyclone, and again, do your own research on this, but they shipped a product that held like something like over 16 terabytes of decentralized and encrypted data storage, and they're going to move into compute, is my understanding, is their aspiration. But the point is, on plug and play hardware, think about like a PlayStation 5, right? Like Cardano SPOs, we can create a product that's basically like a PlayStation 5 that pays your rent, right? Imagine having plug and play hardware that was a fully performant Cardano node, and it was running an instance of the Mithril Meadow, right? So for folks, shout out to the Mithril signatures on Cardano, right? Moving forward with that, which is you have, let's say you've got 1,000 SPOs, right, that are regularly cooking, but there's 132 of them, random number, that have been validating flawlessly for like 24 months, right? Some number of epochs. So that would be like, I think there's 73 epochs in a year. So like, 146 or whatever the hell, epochs of, hey, wow, they've been cooking Cardano blocks, validating da 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 da. Mithril allows those SPOs to be assigned a greater weighting for their recent blocks. Okay. And so if you're bootstrapping, if you have a wallet, right? If you've got, and that's another thing. Someone in the community had said that Cardano has like 8 wallets, and that's true, bro. It's been a while since I've looked at them, but I do remember like a couple years ago, bro, it was like Giro wallet and Flint wallet, right? Speaking of people who have been paid, although Flint wallet was fire. Well done, Sebastian. For folks who don't know, Sebastian built that. It was really slick. It was so lightweight. It was really good. Anyway, it's now been sunsetted. The Flint wallet, they sunsetted it, and that was like so dope. That is what Lace should have been built on. But like these Cardano wallets, right? If we're forward thinking in our plans together, and we go, oh yeah, Cardano's marketing. One of our chief thing is we're the grand unified UTXO theory, the home of hope. How oppressed people escape. Right? Everyone's got to pay their bills, and the rent's too damn high. Right? Cardano's how you do that. And what else can you do? Bitcoin and Litecoin and Monero and Zcash. If I'm building our marketing proposal, the communities that we want to start vibing with and saying, yo, Cardano can help you. Cardano can facilitate atomic swaps. Cardano, and shout out to Ergo, okay? People that like proof of work and smart contracts, right? And so Cardano SPOs begin to optionally say, hey, I want to validate Bitcoin and Litecoin and Dogecoin and Zcash and ADA. And we can start tracking how profitable that is. Because if we're effective at saying, hey, Zcash, love your cryptography, good luck with that orchard situation, right? And I think they're going to be fine. I think they're going to be just fine, right? For folks who don't know, they had a liquidity pool drained. Orchard is, I guess, the whatever. And so basically, I think I actually suspect that there wasn't. I think it was more about shaking the confidence in the markets. But I think ultimately Zcash is going to be fine, and there was not a lot of extraction there. So basically, they've got a liquidity pool, right? Orchard. Now, then they found a leak in it, right? Over the course of time, you have no way of tracking. Let's say in this instance, they have no way of tracking the rate of flow in or out, okay? So what they can do, now that they've known, oh my gosh, this vessel does not contain the 21 million UTXO set of Zcash. So for folks that don't know, Zcash was they did right, like Charlie Lee with Litecoin, right? They looked at what Bitcoin folks did, and they even looked at what Litecoin folks did, and they said, we like the 21 million, the UTXO, but we need privacy, we need cryptography on this, right? So anyway, so there's this liquidity pool, and there was a way to exploit some of the cryptographic custody options, and people could have extracted. So what they're going to do is create another vessel, basically, with assurances. So you basically create a vault, and you migrate the liquidity. So if you know that unmined, because I think there's something like 18 million or something. Don't quote me on it. As a matter of fact, I mean, shit, we could look, and I mean, shout out to the markets. Bitcoin as of 6/16/2026 today, 65,700. Close to 66. I think we're good. Again, I think 69 to 72,073 is the true value. Fair, fair value is way above that. But so 69, if that's like the real floor and people have leverage to keep it below that level, that's something to look out for. And again, word is we're getting a peace signing on the 19th. So that's exciting in Switzerland. Let's go Switzerland. Cheat code for beauty, by the way. Beautiful country. But Zcash. I want to say there's like 18 million of them. I'm going to check right now. 16.7 in circulating supply of 21 million, right? So Zcash, great, right? So let's say they have basically it's Bitcoin with cryptography. You got some privacy options, but they don't have smart contracts, right? That's where Cardano goes, we're your Huckleberry, right? I mean, shit. And that's so compelling, right? And then we do the same thing for Monero. Monero's having off ramps and on ramps gone, right? Whereas if we had robust liquidity pools on Cardano, And you could go from your Monero set, UTXO based. It's got an infinite supply, but its issuance rate is engineered to track basically Bitcoins. So yes, Bitcoin approaches that asymptotic issuance of 21 million Bitcoin in around the year 2140, but then we'll have churn and transactions and all this shit. Monero tracks very close, but it doesn't have the asymptote. Monero will be able to keep traveling beyond the 21 million domain, however you want to. But Cardano can be Monero. Do you want to be able to participate in stablecoin liquidity, right? Who knows? Who knows how you're trying to pay your bills, right? Or maybe you just want to get some of that Monero value over into the Bitcoin set because you do want to go get a house. Shout out to Bill Pulte in America, the whole Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Bitcoin. Bro, in America, you now see, think about that. Think about that. I think it's more likely that Bitcoin charges back towards $100,000 before the end of the year than not. I think that's more likely. If we get real peace accords, bro, and I mean, oh man, I'm not even gonna go. There is a different state of play. You know what I mean? You've had regime change and turnover. I'm shit like from Ecuador, from what's happening in Russia, like and Ukrainian peace, bro. If we start stacking, if we start having like a wave of peace accords, and then we get Clarity Act, and also by the way, right, we got SpaceX cooking, we got AI companies cooking. In my head, I'm keeping. I know this is kind of going around a little bit, but Larry Fink, he's the interim head of Davos or whatever. He's the largest institutional asset manager in the world, and when he said a couple things that he's looking at 2029 and kind of just thinking about 1929, the Great Depression, that to me means, right, eyes on 2029. Bitcoin's next halving is in 2028. Litecoin's in 2027, in about a year and a month or whatever. We will be cooking if we go peace mode. Amen, Shane. Amen. Right? Like, I mean, and that's the thing, dude. And then we've got also November coming up, right? And they pitched hard for the cryptocurrency. The current administration went hard to get support from the cryptocurrency community. So if you do not think that coming into voting season, now again, for my money, bruh, right? It's corrupt. All of it bought and paid for. And again, this isn't a debate. This isn't a what if. We know this, right? Citizens United, that's a problem, bro. But it's where we're at, And so I'm not going to be the one that misses how did Nancy Pelosi perform, well, right? Those kinds of folks get to see the SpaceX IPO coming, right? And think about this. The people participating in the SpaceX IPO and the coming AI IPOs, they're blockchain natives. Oh, also, spoiler alert, that most of us know, blockchain technology will be the native monetization layer for AI. Think about it, right? You're not going 3 to 5 business days. That will flow through XRP. Why? Banker's coin, right? CBDC. I don't touch it because that, right? But I like that it has a billion unit max supply, right? So that's another thing. When we talk about like better Bitcoin conversations and better conversations across the blockchain communities, we exponentiate the value we create. We are leaving behind Satoshi Nakamoto, right? We're trying to liberate the people of the world. And we don't do that having them DCA into Michael Saylor's, fiat industrial complex that he's introduced with stretch, dividends. Bro, stretch pays out biweekly 11.25 or 11.5%. That's a free market working, but that is now an encumbrance on the 21 million unit Bitcoin set. So if you're sitting there going, oh yeah, 21 million units, everyone in the world can bid on these, I've sometimes talked about imagine 21 million magical boxes. Now we know each of these boxes is divisible by 100 million smaller units that all, called a Satoshi, right? We know that every one Bitcoin's 100 million smaller units. But if you think about this, if you we're like, oh shit, what if there were 21 million people all around the world and in the Depression, right? You had cash under your mattress, right? If you did at the end of whatever, maybe you took 10% of whatever and you put it in that magic box under your bed, right? But imagine that's a box that is a Bitcoin. You know what I mean? And what's cool though is as everyone is inputting value in those boxes all around the world in this blockchain, it enriches the entire network. And the power of the max supply, 21 million, that's divisible by 100 million units. So get this, when one Satoshi is equal to 1 penny one Bitcoin will be worth $1 million. So when Bitcoin is at 100 grand, the smallest unit that's built into the protocol, a Satoshi, is a tenth of a penny. It's kind of cool. You know what I mean? And so a lot of people like have no idea. They're just like, oh, it's 60 something grand, can't afford it. It's like, no, bro, you can get like $5 worth. And that's like millions of these small. So like the penny of a Bitcoin. Did you submit to get a CK agent in Midnight City? No, I didn't. I think Midnight City is a little bit silly. I think it's I wish it well. I'm leaning into the positive, so I'm not trying to be critical of stuff. But anyway, back to the Cardano collective and the plan. Anyway, but yeah, so Cardano as a blockchain, when we're leading and we're having inspiring visions, think about that, how powerful that is. Cardano becomes the home of good hope, GUUT, Grand Unified UTXO theory, which is just saying there are many freedom recipes you can cook. There's not one set of UTXO based assets. Feel me? Like some people are going to go, all right, I'm going to go Bitcoin, Litecoin, Night, Monero, right? And some people are going to go, all right, I'm going to go Dogecoin, and then I'm going to go PEP, concurrently merge mined on the SCREP network. Did you know PEP Bitcoin has their own network now? And the ticker is PEP. It's brilliant. And like to me, the use case for them, right? UTXO based blockchain, but it's merge mine, like, because for Litecoin, right? You have Litecoin, Dogecoin, Bell's coin, and Pepcoin. There's actually like 40 or 50, but those three, everyone knows about Dogecoin, right? But do people know that you merge mine Litecoin and Dogecoin together? So think about that. Cardano SPOs become something like that, right? Which is another reason why by adopting Litecoin, by integrating that, like by extending the Bifrost bridge, like let's get Bitcoin cooking, right? Of course, you know what I mean? But then when we can also go, yeah, bet, light switch, now we're Zcash live, and then Zoom, now we're Monero, you know what I mean? And by doing that, that's sex and sizzle, bro. Like when we lead up to imagine 21 days leading up to the light switch on Monero. Even if we could do it today, it's better to have that build. That's because there's value in that. You know what I mean? And that's man, you know? So anyway, man, I was thinking about the Draper proposal and like $80 million. And I'm like, could you imagine if we had $80 million worth of stablecoin liquidity? I mean, shout out to Strike perpetuals, bro. Strike is going live and they're going cross chain. Hey, and shout out to Dixie, wherever that gentleman, bro. Dixie, man. So there is a couple meme coins. There's this Toonk, there's this Puffle situation. But the point is, there's human beings behind whatever, they're just community members. And this dude was vibe coding a Solana CNT bridge. And so like this one dude, shout out to Dixie, is like, bet, like, because one of his friends that has this, a silly meme coin that launched, I think they launched on Sneck.fun. Yeah, oh, I'm sorry, Dixie. I'm sorry, bro. I take that back, man. So no, Dixie is a very, very serious developer. Okay. Word is he may be Satoshi. I'm not trying to put that on you, bro. I'm not trying to put that on you, but no, that is fire though, bro. So Solana, dude. And did anyone pay him a check? Did anyone say, hey, Dixie, hey, thanks? Like, y'all understand, right? Y'all understand what we could do just by celebrating that shit? Charles, bro, right? So that's what the Cardano Collective is about. That's the real Discord where real community can go, yo, let's cook this. We have the global nexus of conversation. We have an SPO channel, a DREP channel. Here's what we do also. Imagine if you had content creators going live saying, yo, I do 1 to 3 hours every MF and day, right? Shit, right? We even go for the first year, we do not quit and the pipe stays lit. Shout out to the Sneck fam. You telling me we can't get that cooking, but are you telling me that team that burns that much couldn't be doing more as well, right? Like, again, supporting people to do live content, anyway. So if we have those things for the Saturday night fights, now that's Bodega's minting, right? And if people are participating in Bodega, right, then we're all working for our bags. You know what I'm saying? And so these are the things we exponentiate the value we create by linking those, right? When we're talking about strike perpetuals, bro. Like, bro, they went live with SpaceX Like I on one of these live streams, gave them a shout out because they had just gone Nvidia. And right, it's like if they can do Nvidia, they're certainly going to be able to do SpaceX. But I did not expect them to be live pre-IPO, like people that are on Binance and these other fucking things. And Strike is UTXO based smart contracts, ladies and gentlemen, non KYC. And these major platforms, they got the rug pulled on their SpaceX. To my understanding, Strike Perpetuals delivered. Dude, I have chills. I have chills. That makes me, that is what Satoshi was doing, guys. You know, I mean, when you have folks going that and then making that kind of accessibility to like the capital flow of the world, and that was on Cardano, dude, by Strike. And so if folks were right, if there was a channel where people could go, whoa, like what, and then not only did they get the Strike thing cooking or the SpaceX exposure pre-IPO with leverage, I think of 5x, they had the LP, like they're and now they've got the Aave situation. So get this, in our SPO network, a lot of folks that can spin up a node, they're not out here doing this, right? They may not want to. I mean, there's a lot of folks in the community, they speak different languages, and then man, we can go into all the quick TLDR, right? Just like we're seeing with our governance, that centralization. Our the Constitution is, there's like four open seats and 5 people are running, it's weird, man. It's weird. And it's centralized, and so when you start looking at, okay, IO had about 2 billion ADA at Genesis, Cardano Foundation had about 650 million ADA at Genesis, and Emergo had about 2 billion ADA at Genesis. Cool. So in total, it's like 4.5 billion ADA just as an endowment to begin. Now, for folks that don't know, there will only ever be 45 billion ADA. And as a matter of fact, since we checked out the Zcash circulating supply, let's 36, yeah, 36.37 billion ADA of 45 billion are currently in circulation, trading at 1743. Congratulations, guys! Really being back over that 16 cent, 17 cent. Congratulations for anyone that did accumulate. I think over the long course, especially if we start doing what we should be doing. That's the other thing. It is not a question of whether we can win. It's, are we going to have a will to do it? We have all the pieces. Again, like look at what Strike offers, right? And then you look at a community like SNEC. That's liquidity. You look at what CSwap is offering, right? And things like MinSwap and Steel Swap, like some of these things are really, really cool. And been a long time coming. They should have had the collateral issue worked out. But that's a really cool thing that I also read on the timeline. For folks that don't know what I just said there, smart contract expressiveness, right, will be really powerful to have for Bitcoin. Well, one of the ways that you do that to facilitate the round trip of the expression of the UTXOs from the wallet side to, like, if you're connecting to a decentralized exchange or some other protocol, right? My brain, I was just thinking about some really cool shit. Point is, they're now basically subsidizing that activity. That was basically necessary float. You had to basically have like 5 ADA worth of for a collateral UTXO in your wallet, because in order to have that mathematical determinism and formalism that we like built into the protocol, is that for every transaction that you initiate, there's a guarantee that you can complete the transaction, that it's not one way. It's not like a draining situation, and so your collateral makes sure that all of it can be satisfied regardless of the current state of the UTXOs within that wallet. So that's why there's that limit to 5, and they could limit it, but again, it also depends on what's the value of Cardano, how much is 3 ADA. Yeah, shout out to it. Yeah, just saying like chat disconnected and whatnot, but then it said successfully connected. So anyway, yeah, so shout out to the all these upgrades. But I digress. So our SPO network, right? The reason I bought up those founding allocations and endowments, there's something called a K parameter. That is the number of optimally saturated stake pools. That number is currently around 400. Okay. It is not a coincidence, do you think, that these founding entities were delegating to approximately that number, ensuring that there was a right? And as you would want to, right? That is how the protocol is designed to operate with a certain number of stake pools that are maximally saturated. What's really cool about how an SPO works, is you want a sweet spot, right? You don't want of the 45 billion ADA, it to all like 8 billion of it to be in one dude's whatever, right? So how do you limit that? You go, bet we're going to have an optimal number, and it's around like 60 million. It's like 64ish or whatever, but it diminishes. You want it to diminish because that means that more stake pools are spinning up if the network's healthy. And that's another thing. It's very lightweight. It does not take a lot. You can have a Cardano validated, fully validating stake pool less than 2000 USD. Like really, a couple of laptops and a stack of hard drives, and you can get there. Which is a powerful value proposition. That participation in the network, right? But then, right, so now how do you guarantee that your hardware participates in the validation of the network? That's where the proof of stake comes in, right? You need people that are on the network to say, bet, I will delegate my ADA weighting to your pool because, I believe in you, I'm supporting you, all this. I'm gonna get paid, right? If you mint blocks, I make money, and you have my ADA, and that means your stake pool will more probabilistically participate in the creation of a block. Okay, but right, but there's a limit, right? If we saturate beyond 60 million, we actually decrease our odds of validating a block, right? So there's a sweet spot. Basically, you want at least a million ADA to within every 5 days, you'll probably mint a block. Whereas if you're 60 million, you probably, because Cardano produces blocks pretty rapidly, much faster than the 10 to 15 minutes of Bitcoin, and even faster than the 2.5 to 5 minutes of Litecoin. Um, One of the reasons why Litecoin has 4 times the supply of Bitcoin, the 84 million, is just the block time parameter, and then the silver to gold ratio, the 1 to 4. It's very cool. It's beautiful, actually. Shout out to Charlie Lee. But again, Cardano can make that money. And that's the other thing. Shout out to the Lit VM, but I'm gonna say it like, I think they're going to have a really great. I think they will have a product that is at parity with Ethereum and Solana. But I will ever and always not just contend, it is provably so that you maintain the custody of your asset and your self-sovereignty and your ability to deterministically express it by remaining within a UTXO regime, a grand unified UTXO theory. Whatever the track you take, shout out to like Houdini Swap and Silent Swap and all these different protocols where you can go from one to the other. But in these like Cardano SPOs, we're looking at Bifrost, we're looking at Mithril. There's a lot of synergies, And so basically, when every Cardano SPO for very little overhead has a full copy of ADA, Knight, Bitcoin, Litecoin, Monero, Dogecoin, Zcash, and facilitates the atomic swaps. Y'all know that Tether was the most profitable company in the world per employee, and $1 billion per employee, and they had around 100-ish employees. That's just taking 1% to 2%. So imagine Monero folks go, bet, we heard that y'all have a copy of our ledger, and we go, yes, we do, and they go, well, cool, can we get from Monero to ADA, and we go, yeah, sure, can we get from Monero to Knight? Yeah. Monero to Zcash? Sure. Monero to Dogecoin? Yeah. Right. And if you think about it, when you extend what Bifrost is doing, it's going to allow Cardano to do that. So Cardano SPOs, just like Tether, facilitate, right, 1% to 2%. All right. So could you imagine, right? Someone wants to move 100K, right? Like again, imagine, and freedom to you. Imagine you're a Monero whale, right? And you've got $500,000 worth of Monero. But you know that the Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are allowing Bitcoin-backed loans, home loans, right? And you want to get on the property ladder. Now, houses are crazy high. Crazy. The real estate, that's going to correct, which is another reason why like Bitcoin and blockchain, do not get shook, guys. Clarity is coming. I mean, really, I think that the way that the suits are playing it, like why politicians make 170 something thousand a year, but they retire with like 30, 40, 50 million. It's because, right, they're like, oh, bet, let's get in on the SpaceX IPO. Cool, cool, cool. Let's get in on this Anthropic IPO. Cool, cool, cool. And you've stacked chips. Meanwhile, right, you're the politicians. You're going to sign the bill that prints like an MF. This is what people is not priced in. When budgets are passed, guys, when the United States passes their next major budget, who amongst us believes that that is not going to be a record number. With Iran operations, $1 billion a day baseline on top of everything else, right? Social Security, Medicare, veterans benefits, everything that we do, subsidies for oil and all this, all of it. So the suits know we are printing heavy at the end of this year. Um, Hence Clarity Act, guys. It is not a coincidence. Do you guys know there are 7 US states that have already passed legislation for state Bitcoin reserves, state strategic Bitcoin reserves? 7. There's 6 or 7. And there is 14 or 15 with legislation active now, moving through state houses. And then have we forgotten about the national, like the US strategic Bitcoin reserve? Because we know, right? If we're going to we are debasing the dollar, right? If if you have $1 million in your account, like dude, it was like last year, it was crazy. Where if you had $1 million in your account in like January 1 of 2024, by January 1 of 2025, you had like less than $900,000 of economic because it had lost, right? Because man, right, for the toilet paper and eggs and oil, dude. But the printer, right? Um, Man. And so think about treasuries, think about international trade is what I'm leaning this to, right? Because what is the inevitable? The strategic Bitcoin reserve is going to be established with international trade as Bitcoin is the preferred unit. It's been the dollar. The dollar is about to lose its argument for being that international fundamental sort of unit of account and exchange for trade because we have to print so heavy, right? If you're Argentina or you're China or you're Russia or you're pretty much any of these things and you're going, bruh, like even if I'm trying to love it as your friend, like you got a problem with your currency, right? So how can we ameliorate the problem that we've got here, right? Because we're printing more than $1 trillion every 100 days. That is such a wild rate of dollar creation. Um, Man, it's got my brain thinking about one of the things that really is frustrating about the bankers bill with Clarity Act because that is the other thing. And shout out to Wendy O. That's the of her recent coverage. I've liked that the most. I've really liked the fact that she's being very frank about the state of Clarity Act, and it's true. Like imagine if in Henry Ford's day, when the Model T was being created, that like horse saddle salesmen lobbied politicians and said, "Bro, do not let Henry Ford make more than 10,000 cars." And they're like, "Well, why?" And they're like, "Because we're not selling horse saddles anymore, bro." Right? If these cars, right? And they're like, "Bro, that's called creative destruction," right? Same thing with typewriters in the era of the PC. It's like, bro, switch to selling PCs because no one's going to sit here, rick, tick, 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 ting, rack. You know what I'm saying? And so, and yet, with blockchain technology, and especially when you put AI on that situation, that makes insurance. Because think about this: insurance is probabilistic money shuffling, and the insurance model is fundamentally socialist at its base. When you think about it, you got a bunch of Walmart employees. Who cares, right? Nancy doesn't know Billy. Nancy's 60 with a heart murmur. Billy's a track star, right? And he's 20, right? Nancy pays 300 a month for her account, for her policy. Timmy pays $50. Why? Probability. The older lady's probably going to need the health care. The young person isn't. So that all goes into a socialist pot of funds, right? And with private insurance, they take 20+% out to start the conversation. And then they try to get health care. They'll fight you over the remaining 80%. That's crazy work, right? And whereas we can decouple these insurance companies with AI and blockchain, we go bet. We'll fund an account. So there's either two things. We save 20%, basically all of the money that's being printed by these, private insurance companies. So, and yet they're lobbying, so I bring them up because that's like the banks. The banks should be forced to compete with blockchain technologies, right? But now get this. A lot of folks want us to cut the federal interest rate, right? One of the reasons, the arguments for not doing it is by making money cheaper, by making banks' ability to do fractional reserve lending and borrowing, um, it increases our inflation problem. Now get this. Clarity Act is being hostile to DeFi. What happens with DeFi? It Some of those deposits that would have gone into banks would go to DeFi. Okay, that's what banks are fighting. But think about this: everyone can win here, right? If banks have less deposits, right? So they can do less fractional reserve banking. What's the other lever you could pull, right? If they have less deposits and they're creating less credit, ergo less dollar issuance, you are creating an auspice for a cut. So looking at Warsh, apparently, whoever this guy is, right? He's more favorable to cryptocurrency. Man, this is why we got to get these boomers out. Because if folks that knew the game, bro, we can all win in a free market. That is the approach that Clarity Act should take. Banks should not be given a position of advantage. And as a matter of fact, DeFi creates a more favorable for a rate cut, a more favorable environment. It, in fact, creates an argument for it. To the greater extent that DeFi is successful, and the reality is, DeFi would only get man, we would be if we got 1% in the first year, right? So it's a road to hoe, bro. But that would climb ideally, right? If we're offering compelling, things in the DeFi environment. Um, anyway, so yeah, there's just better ways to be doing this. And the anti-competitive nature of the lobbying and whatnot with a Clarity Act is not dope. But anyway, back to focusing in on the objective here. I am typically inclined to ramble because there's so much and it is interconnected, and we need people again having better conversations, and you will know them by their fruit. I'm not out here, yeah, boomers gotta go. Oh, bro, 100%. They don't even know what this shit is, bro. They don't know what it is. Ugh. And I mean, shout out to like oh my gosh. There's Caitlin Long, but then there's the Claire McCaskill keeps coming in my head, but it's not Claire McCaskill. Shit. She's from Wyoming. Who's the senator from? Doesn't matter. But she was lobbied heavily by the Ethereum folks, like Consensus or whatever the hell, like one of the. And so these people that were advocating, and just like Michael Saylor, right, was trying to be like Bitcoin only and all this stuff, which is, I'm so glad that they failed. But yeah, these folks don't know. They don't know. But in a post Clarity Act world, right? When we know we're going to print a lot of dollars, so there's going to be less reasons for people internationally buying our currencies. That means Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the asset that becomes the new, whatever. So when we start hearing about international trade in oil, steel, rice, beans, beef, like commodities and shit, and then water, it's going to really radically change the valuation paradigm. And I think that people, when you consider real estate's really overpriced right now. When you look at the chart, it's at an all-time high, no buyers. Because think about that as well. Creative destruction. That's another reason why banks should be forced to compete with us. We are sacrificing hundreds of thousands of American families where it's like, hey, Nancy, your emails and spreadsheets were great, but ChatGPT and Claude do it better for $3,000 a year, not 72. So congratulations on the baby and the new house, but now you got to go find a new job. We go, okay, bet. That's a free market. Well, if you and me have to compete with that in the land of the free, I'll be damned if a bank shouldn't have to compete with Bitcoin and Cardano and Litecoin and Monero and blockchain. Caveat emptor, buyer beware. And so, right, like you should have the freedom. And that, man, there's a whole lot there. Like, when we say, I'm trying to think of that lady again, because I'm in my brain, I'm seeing a tweet that she did where she's talking about the necessity for, and she dropped in real tea leaves. She's been one of the big voices and proponents of blockchain and cryptocurrency technology. The antithesis of Elizabeth Warren. Man, Elizabeth, it's so upsetting, bro. So, but anyway. So, guys, Cardano SPOs and DREP roster. Those two things, right? So get this. Goals matter. So first we get 10 SPOs. Are they fully saturated? Maybe not. There's a lot of folks that aren't fully saturated, but we get them in the Cardano Collective Discord. We get them in the SPO channel, right? And they go, yeah, bet. So, hey, I'm here. I run an SPO, and here's my ticker. Well, then what we do is on our media live streams that we're doing every day, we go bet. This 5-day epoch is dedicated to feeling like, shout out to Yam, Maureen. Shout out to Maureen. She's got a stake pool. YAM is the ticker, YAM, right? So people can delegate their data there. But we could create this roster, right, of folks. I think 300 is one of the pools. Shout out to Wolfoden. Shout out to, I know there's one called Pride. I think there's one now called Faith. These kinds of things, So as these SPOs show up and go, yeah, bro, I'm running a stake pool. Here's my ticker. And then we start incorporating that. We give them 5 days. Shout out, oh, Joker pool. Amen, bro. For folks that don't know that Joker cat, bro, he's always pushing the hardware implementations, man. Shout out to Joker. Yeah, he's really dope, dude. He's really about that life. He's trying to run the hardware. He believes in the freedom. He believes in the tech. He believes in all that stuff. So it's folks like that in the community, right? So imagine this, right? We get like 10 of these SPOs and we get them fully saturated. Now imagine this, right? These are now yield-bearing companies. This is another reason why it's absurd for the Cardano Foundation and Emergo and whatnot to come with their hand out, because just staking their founding ADA, like 2 billion or 650 million ADA, they were making more than 20 to 40 million dollars a year, right? If you're hiring young, scrappy employees, 100 grand, when I look at $1 million, that's 10 engineers. That should be 10. We hear that, man, like IO, they're the ones that are bidding. So we have to pay whatever Charles's rate is. Now shout out to Charles for the EU TXO model and all this stuff, but he has a penchant for bankrupting and ventures, right? So whatever was going on with the cement or the health clinic, and we have the macro environment and whatnot. But bro, I did not know, as someone with an engineering degree, I remember thinking, like, I was like, oh yeah, like 150 grand, yeah, but that's a pretty big salary. So maybe tighten the belt, give him 120 grand, and then you start hearing he's paying them like senior research engineer at Google. He's paying folks 400 grand. And we're eating that sales pressure, guys. So when you've got like 50 to 100 engineers that Charles is just saying, well, we just got to pay them. And it's like, could we get those things and get a return, right? And then there's no one else bidding, which is why, again, this conversation, very necessary. Because we have a thing where Charles will say, here's 100 million ADA proposal. No line items, right? Because that becomes an uncomfortable conversation. When you go, oh, 60% of this is your 50 fucking dudes there, bro. Like, cool. I'm sure they're really dope. But 400 grand. We can do that better, right? Like the Dingo team. Bro. Shout out to Blink Labs, I think. Like, anyway, there's a couple of these like independent. Shout out to Michele, bro. He's the Pebble. I've been looking at some of this guy's work. Anyway, there's very lean and scrappy teams that are like innovating, like very relevant at the L1. Like again, look what Dixie was doing with Solana. Solana to Cardano native asset, keep bridging swaps. Like that, we could move money with. And yet we're funding these weird projects for this team of engineers. And remember, that's sales pressure, guys. So when we know these founding entities have their pool, their 400 network pool, guys, that's also why our governance is messed up, to like just be like, to be very frank, right? So there's the K parameter. What's the optimum number of saturated stake pools? Cardano Foundation delegated to about 400 stake pools. So then you have a team of people that have the hear no evil, see no evil, right? If you start saying, hey, Fred, maybe don't, or hey, Chuck, maybe you shouldn't, then you don't get paid. And so then we get this self-referential, this and a kind of a sycophantic situation. And then we get to the point where our constitutional, whatever, right? Like only 5 people running for it. And if you want to get real about it, that's like, look at who's on it. Why, right? Are the leading stablecoin person also on that committee, and this other person that's on 2 of these payrolls is on the constitutional committee? And you look at, the leading NFT project that also got a lot of support, they're also ahead of an intersect committee. For folks who don't know what these are these, not just founding entities, but things that have been funded by these entities. And you just start realizing it's the same group. And so when that's paying your bills, you do not want to rock that boat. And bro, those salaries, could you imagine? Could you imagine really making 400 grand? Those are those ridiculous questions we see on the timeline sometimes. Like, can you make it on 200 grand? Bish! Like, if you can't, you have a problem. Bro, I could raise like 4 babies and a wife on 200 grand, right? Like, you should be able to make that work, unless you got like crazy debt and bills, bro. So these people are living fat, but there's no returns. What do we get for it, right? Whereas part of the Cardano collective, Crypto Treasure Quest, just to do a cool little TLDR. So one, two big objectives, SPOs and DREPs, but then once we have 10 SPOs fully saturated, and then we keep going. 10 becomes 17, becomes 21, becomes 50, becomes 42. All, they have 42 answers, 42, 69, 420, all that, right? And then DREPs as well. Because then think about it. Then Dingo node proposals, just infrastructure, Bifrost, are SPOs that we're also helping get delegation. Also, this cooperative, collaborative strategies that exponentiate the value. So imagine if we had 21 SPOs that were fully saturated, cooking blocks. For folks that don't know, right now, shout out to Adam K. Dean. It's about $2 million, guys. If you have a fully saturated stake pool, 60 plus million ADA, and you're cooking all year, you're going to make probabilistically current rate, it does diminish over time and all that, about $2 million. And that's at like current, could you imagine if we actually started getting people going, hold on, Cardano can do smart contracts for Zcash and Monero? And then Cardano's at $5 because suddenly Monero and Zcash is like, let's get in this pool, right? You got to have a bigger liquidity, and then you get, man. So there's a lot of exciting stuff, and SPOs can participate in that plenty. One revenue stream, just the atomic swapping. Extend the Bifrost proposal, where every SPO that opts in can be like, yeah, I'll hold a copy of the Zcash ledger, the Monero ledger, the Dogecoin ledger, the Litecoin ledger, the Bitcoin ledger. And then we're going to facilitate decentralized access to DeFi. So that's stablecoin, yield, lending and borrowing, perpetuals participation. So now imagine we've got these 21 this network of stake pools, and we initiate. See, this is what's so cool when you talk about like being able to exponentiate. Imagine if we create like an instrument, a cadence where we take 6 epochs at a time, that's about 30 days, and we dedicate the entire network's ADA toward something like a stake or a strike, right? So then, right, so you've got this network of SPOs generating every 5 days, and they are collaboratively saying we are going to swap, because we all, and they're part of the network, but think about that, right? So then they swap from ADA to strike. Now, Strike just had their proposal trying to get liquidity because they need participation. Here's a way, organic free market, using the protocol itself, acting in unity, things that we could weave together very simply on Discord. And again, we're going to keep it light. There's only going to be, we've got the three, we've got general, SPO network, DREP network, and then Cardano, the crypto treasure quests will be one, because that deserves, that's a whole really cool thing. The midnight galleries and auctions, that is the NFT Renaissance project, and multi-chain. All of these, by the way, are cross-chain collabs, crypto-wide. And then we've got Cardano Keeps, really cool gamified SPO situation. And we got at least 5 major ones, and so those deserve like dedicated channels, because SPO network may be like, oh yeah, we're gonna there's a lot there, right? But that is the kind of macro. What is the Cardano collective going to do? First 2 primary ones, let's get SPOs, and at this point, it's literally just go to the Discord, check in, and be like, hi, I'm Bob, I run an SPO. And by the way, if you're going to be doing live stream content and you're going to just pick an SPO to shout out for 5 days, or for a week, hi, yeah, my ticker is whatever that is, right? And then there we go. So then we start, right? We have this network of SPOs fully saturated. Now think about that. They want to increase their yield. Shout out to Nash Equilibrium, right? Where we get a state where all of us working in our own interests actually advances the state of play for the full network. That's the beauty of Nash Equilibrium. Every player pursuing their own interests advances the state of play for everyone. And so you get this network of SPOs that are going, yeah, bet we're gonna swap over to Strike, and then we're all gonna stake to Strike. Now we've got a faster, higher revenue yield, and Strike is now cooking. Strike has more support, and they didn't have to tap a treasury, because now we're using the free market. We're acting as entrepreneurs. We're independent minds, but we understand the power of collaboration. Because now think about when that's rolling through the Cardano ecosystem. 6 epochs of 10, 21, 42 of stake reward yields, bro. I have chills thinking about that. This is what a Fred and an Emergo and a whatever and a Chuck, man. Like, and that's fun. That's fun. Then you become that thing, and then talking about that where, and that's what we do in the Discord. Like, in like that could be part of general NSPO, but that I guess because it would be a coordinated SPO strategy. We cook that in, it really, well, yeah, in the SPO channel, but wherever the thing. But I'm just thinking about that, like electing that, choosing together. What do we want to support for the? Maybe it's strike again. Maybe it's like, bros, we are printing. ADA was like 2.3% or 3.2%, whatever it is right now. 5 years ago it was fat. So again, that's another thing. These founding entities and whatnot that have had 2 billion ADA. Remember, doing nothing else, hands in their pockets, or just buying a new vest and a dapper little cap. Sitting on their hands. They've been handed like $40-50 million a year. And then they come to us with our handout and saying, you know what I mean? Saying, hey, will you fund this party to celebrate us? It's like, bro, you weren't even doing this kind of stuff, right? So yeah, once we get the SPO network, right? And we boom, right? Could you imagine 6 epochs of that network going to strike? But imagine, like, shout out to John and C-Swap and like the Bitcoin Karma project. Imagine this, guys, new ICO launches. Think about that. If it's actually a good idea, you want your Cardano SPO network to be like, bet, I'll get ICO participation, 6 epochs worth. Could you imagine, bro? And so then, if you've really got a good idea, come into the Cardano Collective, go to the SPO, be like, hey guys, I gotta like Ascend. Shout out to Ascend Perpetuals. They're doing midnight. I've heard a lot of great stuff. Shout out to Lump. I'm hearing something about like a Lump AI. So Tap Tools is doing its thing. Shout out to Frigid AI. Shout out to Master of C, OG Sneck Fam business. But yeah, so if Tap Tools does, I think Cabal are gonna buy it, but that's neither here nor there. But Frigid AI exists. I've heard there's something also called like His or His. I don't know, but it's like another one of these things. But I've heard that there's this Lump something, and it's pretty badass, I guess. That it's tracking, it's like a Tap Tools, but it's doing Cardano and Midnight and other shit. So keep an eye out for that, but very exciting times. But so things like this, right? Someone says, hey, I've got a really cool idea for this neat, a perpetuals platform, for instance, right? And then they could say, hey, ICO network, would you be willing to give 6 epochs worth, right? All 42 of you stake pools. So we do one, 6 epochs about a month. And that is like the initial liquidity to launch, right? And then for their participation, they get, our SPO network, the Cardano Collective, gets 10%. And these are the kinds of things that we can cook. That's how we use the network, use the protocol to support each other. So we're not begging Chuck or begging Fred and Emergo, and we're still not getting fed. So this is why it's necessary. Oh man, we're at 1 hour. I really wanted this to be a 1 hour thing. Man. So I will try to land this plane here. I'm going to try to keep it like an hour and a half or whatever, because I want this to be shareable. I want this to be right. And so that's another thing, man. Anyone that wants to, whatever. But yeah, Charles said, if anyone has an idea, just, make a video and pitch it to the community. Well, here you go, right? Join our Discord, the Cardano Collective. 2 big primary things that are going to help us be able to make a difference in the universe of Cardano. SPOs, let's get them in the rooms, hi, I'm Bob style, and then we go, bet Bob, do you have a fully saturated pool? No, I'm your Huckleberry, bro. I'm gonna start shouting you out, and we're gonna start cooking together. But meanwhile, right, strike and da 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 da. This is how, so that we become very effective, and by that. Shout out to Beryl Markham. If a man has any greatness in him, it comes to light not in one flamboyant hour, but in the ledger of his daily work. So yeah, so then we get our SPOs, then DREPs, right? That's kind of self-explanatory, but it's actually it's kind of like a different flavor of the SPO. It's a very similar thing where you want to have high, okay, like because we're hearing like Big Pay and just there's a bunch of folks are stepping down from DREP roles. We're seeing anti what you want to see in a decentralized governance. We're seeing leaders say, run to our Discord. That'll be moderated. Bro, one thing that I think is such a miss. I heard today that Charles was saying that he like changing maybe like treasury proposals, that if they're not approved by the Cabal Discord, that it's not valid. It's like, what? And then someone said that that's already invalidates the Constitution. because it's something about like you can't, you create impediments to the participation or whatever the hell. And then someone said, yeah, no, they'll just write because the Charles's people are the Constitutional Committee anyway. So that's also why it's not the solution to empower the people that have been failing remarkably. Cardano succeeded about 10%. Okay. Charles and Fred and whoever you want to talk about as a founding entity, they have succeeded about 10%. ADA should have been accumulating over $2. Between 3 and 5, we should have had a healthy time getting distribution and floating at 3 to 5. Now we should be like, oh shit, maybe around 2, maybe $1.50. But it's crazy, dude. So for instance, it's going to be hard to convince me that the Draper proposal, 80 million, wasn't, we need another entity. And again, Cabal, Draper, we paid these folks before. But basically, if they did it, we can do it, right? It makes Chuck's 90 million ask not look bad when there's a 70 million ask. That's what it fucking is. I'm sorry, guys, because liquidity of stablecoins is what I really want to say. That enriches everyone with a free market, whether you're Strike or Bodega or Puffle the Fish or Sneck. If we have sensible that enriches everyone. That is what, and that's obvious. That's obvious, And when you have an honest conversation about why haven't we had stable coins? Well, anything you've created, any value that you created on Cardano, by having a base pair as ADA as your only option, Chuck gets fed, Fred gets fed. The people that these folks choose to employ get fed. You and me, we eat that sales pressure, babe. Because we're trapped in ADA. So good job, Sneck. But everyone knew if you're on Solana or Ethereum and you turn $1,000 into $10,000 overnight and you want to go to sleep, you could stable up, as they say, swap half that position, $5,000 into a stable coin. Try doing that on Cardano, right? It's trapping us. That's if we're being honest. So when you start going, okay, we are making big fundamental missteps with capital expression allocation that is disadvantaging people across the board. When you see a pattern of good ideas being bought out and then squandered too, like these independent teams will have a really cool thing cooking and then it gets bought out by someone, and then it sucks, and then it doesn't return, doesn't create value, but the powers that be get power over it. There's no one rising. So then we have folks like Chuck saying, I'm not irresponsible. I have no da-da-da-da. Meanwhile, low-key doing everything to make it so that he is the only face. He is the only one making a video. And then says, well, if someone else, then make a video. Here's a video. I got a better recipe, B. It's better. It's more inspiring. Also, having someone point to the sky like Babe Ruth saying, I'm going to put this ball there, crack. We're going to get ADA to $1. This kind of stuff, and articulating a plan and a long-term vision. You are going to midnight, bro. You're pulling liquidity after, again, as a gentleman who has a penchant for bankrupting enterprises, has incorporated sales pressure that we all bear. And then the midnight airdrop, bro. Not having the most ardent defenders and you, the people proving the network, and they don't get a taste of nothing but the ADA whales, the SPOs you've been delegating to. And so that's when we talk about governance participation, bro. They are delegating and saturating the stake pool network. That's why when the chain split, I was not impressed when it's like, and they all rallied. They're all on payroll. K parameter. Cardano Foundation was delegating to basically the K parameter, ensuring we got the fleet, and they'll shut the F up because we feed them. And that's what we have. That is what we have. That's why there's no good feedback. Because if your bills are paid and you're like, but that's why you're paid. Because you're not going to be talking about, what about the stablecoin shit? Because that's not your problem, because you got that 40K coming in to shut the F up. We've got to break that. That is why the chart is suffering. It's not because the liquidity hasn't been there. It's been, Charles has been choosing what to do with it. Kind of like Michael Saylor and Stretch and Strike, not Strike. Well, actually, he does have a product called Strike, but MSTR, all that criticism in a similar way. Like, people are like, bro, you're hurting Bitcoin because you're this kind of, you're not paying this dividend yield. On ADA's side, Chuck hires a bunch of folks for crazy salaries, and we pay it. Then you have the Cardano Foundation. Switzerland isn't cheap. Oh, and all the travel, going to all these conferences and shit. And so I'm bullish that the Cardano Summit didn't get funded. And that's the thing, is the broader crypto whatever are like misread it like, oh, what does this mean? Is this trouble? That's bullish. That's the community saying, bro, You're sitting on your hands. ADA delegation has been more than 40 million a year, depending on what ADA is trading at. But I lowball it like that. I say 20 to 40 because I know it's more than that, even at 17-cent ADA. When you look at what 2 billion can generate, it's crazy. Um, Man, and we've just been eating that sales pressure, guys. And then meanwhile, no stable coins, no, and man, you know, and when you even look at the infrastructure layer, getting a lot of funding to a couple dexes, here's a reality. You got min swap dex, you got wing riders dex, you got something called a dex aggregator that will reach these out. The reality is on Cardano, shout out to Steel Swap, but Steel Swap had a good relationship with a couple of these dexes. Shout out to Splash. But then there's other ones, maybe like C Swap. Shout out to them. They just recently got incorporated. It's really bullish on it. But these are the things that Clarity Act is also expecting, that behind the scenes, you can't advantage the flow of transactions on the network, right? Just like wouldn't be a good look if you actually bought and paid for all the SPOs. Wouldn't be a good look if your DeFi was all funneling the plenty to a few advantaged players, right? Like again, man, talking about like shout out to the Sneck fam, but guess who was fed with that trading competition? The team, not the community. And that's a conflict of interest because then it's not about can we get Sneck to a penny? It's can we get people buying and selling and trading Sneck? Because if you're on the team and you're at the decks, because those are the uncomfortable realities. These are the people that go to Rare Evo and these summits and shit, get flown out to a ranch. Y'all know that the Sneck team was flown out to Charles's ranch. And so then when you go, oh, fully huck. So these dexes and these liquidity pools and these 2 or 3 friends, every transaction you're doing is feeding the same network, same people. Not a lot of people either. And a lot of them are greedy. And comes from the top. Charles isn't setting a great example. Fred isn't setting a good example. But if you're quiet and go along to get along, we've got to change this. More people have to get fed, you know? That's why, man, even our stable, our meme coin game, dude. I'm telling you, the launch platform, the pump and dump casino from Solana, that's not the winning recipe. We should distinguish ourselves. And man, folks, TLDR is you got a community like Sneck, right? You bake out a banger, you have lore, you say, hey, here's 3 things that could exist. Community says, ooh, I really like that narrative. They evoke it into a summoning, and that whole well-capitalized, excited community launches the next member of the da-da-da-da, and then that meme launches, and you foster it, nurture it for 6 months, and then now you have 2, and then da-da-da-da, so on and so forth. There's way better ways. Way better ways. But we would be remiss if we ignored the power of memes. They are the assets. They live at the fastest liquid layer of the blockchain sort of paradigm and cryptocurrency stack. We have seen billions of dollars move through memes, which is why the notion of like quest coins is going to be a major thing, where you could set goals like for every $1 million that we add to our market cap, we're going to acquire 1 Bitcoin, and then we're going to make that productive in Cardano DeFi. These are the kinds of things. Do you understand, right? How we keep it for folks that are, reading the tea. There are ways where good leadership, having good conversations, creating a spot where there's like a Discord where we can all talk, chop it up and go, hey, yeah, man, that would be a cool way. And hey, this SPO network might be able to do this. We could maybe look at participating in Ascend, getting them a good little liquidity pool situation. Oh, Bifrost Bridge is having a Bitcoin centric, event. So what if we, direct some of our ADA yield into the Bitcoin, get some L1 Bitcoin to really launch, launch that, help the Bifrost Bridge be successful. Things like Bitcoin Karma, right? We do our own research together, and that's the other thing too, man. Because then we are a network working together to do that due diligence and create, really, really awesome shit. So the SPO network, if we're looking at it like a business, like a decentralized autonomous organization, the SPO network would be our revenue stream. It's the thing that Fred and Chuck and Emergo have had. Could you imagine being given 2 billion ADA and baseline just running the network? You don't have to shake a hand or open a door. You can just order fucking takeout, and you're going to get $20-40 million a year, right? So by having that SPO network of buy-in for the people of Cardano, we create a yield flow that the people of Cardano are participating in. And I do believe we should employ a ADA migration strategy. We should be competing for ADA in circulation from Fred. I think it's good. Make them spend their bread. I don't know about you, but I am, yeah, I've taken a haircut by, um, uh, yeah, by participating in Cardano, as has anyone, especially if you've tried to support any of the Cardano native assets and whatnot, you know. Um, but yeah, man, we can't let these same folks squander, the opportunity, and so the SPO network creates a revenue stream, and then by acting in unity, we can benefit from our collective intelligence, to be able to direct that liquidity well, get it generating yield, that nurtures, fosters, and becomes ADA as an asset, Bitcoin DeFi, all this cool shit. Then the D reps allow us to create proposals for treasury, and support projects. When projects say, hey, I've got a really cool idea, I'd like some support. Our D rep roster can go, boom, yeah, man. They have a place to talk about it and say, hey, does this make sense? And you go, yeah, and then you got the SPO channel there and you got the general channel there, but those three things would be so, so powerful. SPO network, D-Rep network, or channels on the Discord, and then the general. And then we add those big projects. And again, the one that I would say has the one to really get the flywheel spinning is the Crypto Treasure Quest, because we could get that going for less than 300 grand, guys. The TLDR, right? You put a Bitcoin, you put 4 Litecoin, you put 2,143 ADA and 1,143 Night in an address. And you say, hey, if you guys can find the 24 words and the correct order first, you unlock that. And it'll go to the wallet that you register at the Crypto Treasure Quest website, right? And then as people discover, right, they're going to do like riddles and whatnot to discover like addresses, IRL locations, which should be crypto friendly small businesses. Because again, we want to exponentiate, we want to market multiple things. So, I often use the example of imagine like a small town, bakery or donut shop in Salem, Massachusetts, Salem, Halloween, Bitcoin white paper, all this. And imagine being like, hey, would you like to have a bunch of people coming into your donut shop saying, yo, can I order the Satoshi Sprinkle? And you're like, why? Well, the Cardano, the Crypto Treasure Quest on Cardano, word is if I order a Satoshi Sprinkle, it's Friday night, it's Friday and Saturday after 8 o'clock. Order the Satoshi Sprinkle, and at the bottom of their receipt, there will be a word, right? And then they order it, they get the word, they go back home with their friend, right? And they go, oh my gosh, they put in that word, then they unlock the next clue, so on and so forth. And that unravels around the world. Now think about this. As you're assembling your team of people that are in that location, you've got to get out on social media. And what are you doing? They're learning about Cardano. They're learning about onboarding a wallet, all these things. Everyone that you add to your team that actually goes and retrieves it. So if you think about it, if it's done well, you want to have it be geographically dispersed enough that you would need to get 24 players involved. If you did the 24 words. And remember, it's the words and the order. So that's the other thing is some people, that I've, discussed this with, are like, well, what about, the last word? Like, can they, will there be like a sprint where one team that was in the lead and da 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 da? I mean, very much, who knows, right? Like we can see what happens. But by the order, right, is how we can lock it and make sure, because I want it to be more than the fact that it's more than just like in Web 2 and Web 3 environments. By incorporating that IRL, it makes it so that people have to network and grow, because odds of one person knowing someone that's in Sydney, and Paris and Seattle, Washington, and Los Angeles and Rio de Janeiro, you know what I mean? And Reykjavik, and so what we do is then it's like you and me and people that are using their social media. If they don't have a friend there, they got to start saying, hey, does anyone know anyone near da 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 da, and so that sells itself. You go into an XRP room, a Zcash room, and da da da. People want money. And so again, when we have professionals that are actually out here trying to make this shit make money, Chuck, fucking Fred, all these people, it's incredible how much bread that these folks have been paid to fuck up everybody else's money, if I'm just being honest. But yeah, and so then you'd have people downloading a wallet, also built in collaboration with something like ADA Handle. ADA Handle is such a cool thing. So along with, could you imagine, like, it truly boggles my mind the power of the value proposition of one, We get a wallet that can support, Bitcoin, da 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 da, Litecoin, Monero, Zcash, all the shit. But like ADA handle, bro. Could you imagine having one like human readable address that you could accept Dogecoin and Monero and Zcash and Bitcoin and Cardano and all of these, bro. But even as at a baseline, right? When you register for the Treasure Quest, basically what you would do, right? As you assemble your team, why I think ADA handle would be a great collab, is because you could have them mint a handle for their team, and then the sub handles are your team members, and then whoever inputs the 24 words in the correct order first, it splits everything that is in that. So we'll inaugurate it like we set it up with one Bitcoin, because that's the shiny sales point, right? And this is how, again, people that are actually out here trying to make money move through Cardano. Think about that. Right now, it's what, 65 grand. We spend more on a pointless calendar, right? We just gave $80 million to Draper with an abysmal stablecoin liquidity situation. Man, it's crazy how wasteful we are. And anyway, so that crypto treasure quest becomes that becomes a crypto community cultural event, and yeah. And what's really cool too is at the website, as they're unlocking, where are the addresses, where are the real life locations, which are these crypto friendly small businesses. And also, by the way, at each of these businesses is a way that we begin to integrate point of sale stuff. So shout out to Hydra and Gummy Worm, da, 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 anyone that's got a really cool point of sale solution, which again, by virtue of the technology, with something like an ADA handle, if I'm Betty's bakery in whatever, I could have literally a QR code or an ADA handle at my register and, monitor that wallet, right? And be like, yeah, dude, you want to buy a bagel? Yeah, I'll give you 10% off if you pay me in Bitcoin or ADA or something like that. You know what I mean? And then boom, goes to Betty's whatever. So at these 24 small businesses, it also gives the Crypto Treasure Quest team we're right. They're learning about wallets. They're learning about point of sale solutions, and then they get that free marketing of everyone around the world going, oh my God, are you near, Susan's Steakhouse in Sydney, Australia? Because that's where the third word is, and then, yeah. And then if you don't live in Sydney, then you got to get on social media and go, hey, anyone that can go to the steakhouse in Sydney, Australia and order the Satoshi Spritzer, you know what I mean? And get me that word. Then I'll add you to my treasure team, so those implementations, the marketing that we have, and then as they're questing, because basically in order to lead up to each word to the address, you could have them, depending on if you wanted to learn about like a fluid tokens thing, learn about a C swap thing, learn about some meme coin thing, as the construction of the quest itself just has so much value in people circumnavigating it. Now get this, right? So you've got people that may need a clue, need a hint, or whatever. And this actually is just now occurring to me. Like, nah. Because I'm thinking like of unlocking the word. Should there be a value? Because here's the thing, right? You can have people buy hints, right? But I think we have the leading team. They set the cadence. So you cannot buy a hint that unless like if just no one can crack it, like if it is like super 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 gnarly and no one's been able to advance for like a 30-day period or something like that, then we can unlock and say, all right, you can buy a hint to advance. But I think people would be very 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 clever and whatnot, and so basically we just have the leading teams will be what determines the time lock on when you can buy a hint. And then we can even make it that your team has to have been registered, for a certain period of time, so that you can't necessarily just buy your way, from the first to the 18th word, but there should be a path over the course of time. And why? Because then if you buy a hint, that just makes the treasure bigger. You know what I mean? So you can basically split it that people that buy hints just grows the size of the treasure that whoever wins, and then the other one funds the treasure quest team, because there's got to be someone that's someone's reaching out to small businesses around the world setting it up. But again, it's really really would not be very complex at all. The value proposition is: do you want people coming into your establishment looking to buy an item? You want free marketing. Um, and yeah. So yeah. But yeah, so that team would have to set it up. And then again, that's just season one, and then season two, you just reload it up again. But now you will have had a community now of treasure hunters and teams that have assembled. And so that if I was looking at the first project that I like two projects. I like that project and the Midnight Galleries project. I kind of like launching them concurrently because they're also distinct. The Midnight Galleries would be more NFTs, and it would be more cross chain collaborations, and would just I think it would become like NFTs have never been artful to me. They've been always silly, and I think that is really the thing, right? There's a quote, there's a line from, I think it's not Herman Hesse, Aldous Huxley. Aldous Huxley's Doors of Perception, where he talks about like a hand, right? If you're going to make a hand out of marble, a hand is 5 digits, 5 fingers. And so the artist isn't choosing that. If you're like, okay, maybe you do, you have a 3 hand, da 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 da. But the human form has a certain thing, Vitruvian Man, right? He mentions though that the intention of the artist is most keenly seen in the ripples of the raiment. And a raiment is like an old kind of archaic term for like clothing. And so it's beautiful to think about that. Like if you're looking at a marble sculpture, the flow of the dress is chosen in a way that like the hand is not, um man, why am I bringing this up? Art. Yeah, art. Celebrating the eye of the artist, right? Persistence of memory, Starry, Starry Night, these great works. Hieronymus Bosch's The Garden of Earthly Delights, you know. So the TLDR is it would be a bespoke invitation only event where we reach out to like multiple blockchain communities, but really being guided by art. We're seeking people that truly have like an artistic vision, and right, like maybe they're, NFT adjacent. But that's the cool thing is they wouldn't actually even, that's actually even almost more compelling. But I would leave people's ability to innovate and pursue their entrepreneurship and whatnot, like, um, but yeah, so you could have multiple cross-chain communities in the NFT space, and you basically say, "Hey, this is an artist that you guys really like." Da 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 da. We basically commission. We say, "Would you like to participate in the Midnight Gallery?" And they go, "Okay, whatever." And we commission them for a one of one, where we celebrate the eye of them as like the eye them as an artist, right? And so it's this invitational event. It can begin da 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 da. It's very very cool. So I think those two things. If you're looking at how do we fix this ghost chain problem? Charles isn't it. Charles's Discord isn't it. Emergo isn't it. Fred and the card, they're not it. Draper, that's not it either. If real businessmen were doing business, we'd be addressing the stablecoin liquidity. Don't come here saying, give me an upstart entrepreneurial team that needs funding. Bish, they're going to launch here, and then how are they going to pay their bills? Get the fuck out, man. I'm trying not to be, whatever, so that, because, but, but yeah, it's not serious. It's not serious. We have principles issues. Draper is because it's handshake, da da da. It's got to look a certain way. If we're cutting a fat check over here, we're not going to be critical of Chuck. We got to stop fucking that up. So yeah, but that's a challenge, right? Because Fred and Chuck and Emergo have had all that ADA to be able to, delegate to stake pools, establish that network, basically buy infrastructure, infra influence and governance influence. The good thing is though, these are free people all around the world, and a lot of stake pools are closing down. Networks are, business, man. We have folks in the community like Cash saying, "I tap, I'm done," and we can't have that anymore. Anyway, hour and a half. I think that's enough. I went, 30 minutes over. TLDR, Cardano Collective. Join the Discord. Two big initial objectives. Get an SPO network. Just, hi, I'm Bob. I run an SPO. Get a DREP network. That allows us to coordinate revenue, exponentiate, do a lot of cool shit, community actions. Also allows us to help you get stake delegated. So you're minting more blocks, because if you're minting more blocks, then right? We could flow more into Strike and da, 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 and all this cool stuff. And then DREPs, we can author better legislation, treasury proposals, cool stuff. Start competing for that. Also, we start acquiring ADA. We start establishing like an emergent fourth entity to offer free market competition for folks that the founding entities went on. And then yeah, and then we've got a good handful of projects, but I think the Crypto Treasure Quest, the Midnight Galleries, that's good. So if we can deliver on those, those first two, get that ball rolling, which is just get in the Discord, say, hey, I exist, and then boom, now you're tapped in to where those conversations will occur, and so when we start rolling out Crypto Treasure Quest, when we start rolling out like Midnight Gallery, we start talking about Cardano Keeps, very a gamified SPO game, another way to get new people that want to run stake pools, delegation. We gamify that and make it fun, give people a reason to delegate to different stake pools in a winner take all system. Very, very cool. Man, there's like anyway, I'll leave some sizzle there. Hour and a half, guys. Cheers, take care. We've got everything we need to succeed. We just got to choose to do it. And don't fall into these echo chambers, right? I mean, we've got way too much sycophancy. It's time to do better. We can do better. Let's get it.